I think Apple has just had their Fujifilm X100V moment, but I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Let's first go over what was announced, and then we'll dive in a little bit more into what I think about that. So I'm going to be talking about the iPhone 16 Pro line as opposed to the regular 16, because I feel like there was a lot more updates to the 16 Pro this year, and the 16 got just very minor updates. So specs wise, both the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max both have the same camera system this year, which both sport a 48 megapixel for both the main shooter as well as the ultra wide now, which is awesome because that lens is definitely getting used a lot more, and I bet Apple has the stats to back that up. And it retains the same 5x telephoto that was found on the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's really great to see that megapixel jump on the ultra wide because that lens is being used just as much, if not more, than the regular lens in a lot of situations. So it's good to see it get the same sort of spec bump that we got previously. And just touching on that main 48 megapixel sensor, it's now got a 2x faster readout speed compared to last year, which means that you're not going to get any shutter lag or anything like that. And it also allows better, higher frame rate video options. And I suspect as well that that faster readout speed will also allow better low light images in dark situations. Because as we know, Apple does their computational photography where they take a bunch of frames really quickly, combine them all together. And if your sensor's reading out faster, I can almost guarantee that they're gonna get a few extra frames in there just to make that noise even better. But we'll actually have to wait until we get that in our hands in order to confirm that suspicion. And new this year as well, we get a new hardware feature, which is called camera control, which essentially gives you a capacitive button on the iPhone that allows you to take photos and change a bunch of settings in the camera app as well. And because it's capacitive, we can like half press almost to lock focus and then full press to take a photo. And double clicking that button allows you to get access to more settings inside the app, such as exposure, zoom, and a bunch of other features that are found in there that allow you to really dial in your shooting experience. I think this is a pretty neat feature, but not like a crazy groundbreaking one. It does look like Apple is opening up the API to access this, so I think it's going to be really interesting to see what third-party camera app providers do with it. Apple's one seems good, but honestly, I don't find myself changing settings all that much on the normal default Apple camera app. Whereas in third-party apps where I'm able to have a little bit more control, I definitely would appreciate that sort of manual control, almost like a dial, being able to swap your shutter speed or whatever. And in that camera control, you can now control the Photographic Styles, which is vastly updated this year, which I think is almost looking to rival Fujifilm's film simulation to a degree. I think Apple is paying attention to creators and how average everyday people are getting excited for cameras nowadays. They see that people are using the ultra wides a lot, and they see that people love Fujifilm's film simulations, which are they are just presets, essentially, a JPEG preset, but really good JPEG presets. And I think that's what we're seeing here with Photographic Styles this year. They've got the typical photographic styles that we saw last year, but now there's even more customizability. You can change the tone and the color in them, and they actually look quite good. Now, Apple's examples are always like absolutely perfect. They always show off these features in the best way possible, but they actually look much more improved and something that I think everyday people will actually use if they give it a try. The fact that you can customize it and make it your default shooting experience, I think we're gonna see sort of like, you know, almost like Fuji X Weekly style recipes that people have made and they share with people and allow you to get really good straight out of camera JPEGs with no editing. I think that's a really cool feature, and I think it's kind of been not talked about all that much, but we're gonna have to wait until we get these phones in our hands to see if it's actually worth the hype, essentially. Now, quickly touching on some AI features before we get into video. They did talk about their Apple Intelligence that is on this phone. It doesn't look all that much different to what's going to be available on the iPhone 15 Pro when iOS 18 comes out. So in terms of features, there is the Erase tool in the Photos app, and you can search your Photos app using AI to be able to describe your image and have it find that particular photo that you're looking for. They also showed the AI being used to location scout and get ideas, which is kind of cool use case. Honestly, I would like to see a use case that I've kind of personally been using semi-recently and testing out, is where when you're taking photos on like your proper camera and you've got your settings dialed in, but you're chucking an ND filter on. I know especially when I go over 30 seconds of exposure, you don't know what exposure you need because you can't see it on the back of the screen. So I have honestly been using ChatGPT saying, here's what my settings are now. I'm chucking on a 10 stop ND. How much on bulb mode am I gonna have to shoot for? I would be interested to see if Apple Intelligence can do that and figure out the math involved in that. But I'll have to see when iOS 18 comes out and give it a try. But there are some definite cool use cases that could be used with these generative AI models in terms of planning and that sort of stuff. But I think we're yet to see a really good implementation of that for photography, for videography. And speaking of videography, sort of what I alluded to earlier with the faster readout speed, we can now shoot 4K 120 frames per second on the iPhone 16 Pro, which is very impressive. There's a lot of data being pushed through the pipeline there, and you can shoot that in full HDR and with Apple Log. And it was kind of disappointing to see that Apple Log still can't be shot in a more compressed format like H.265, and you still have to use ProRes, which essentially limits you to using external drives on the phone to get that sort of record rate. And with this 4K 120 recording, there's a new settings in the Photos app that allows you to control what frame rate you want it to be displayed at. So you can take that 120 frames per second and drop it to 24 frames a second. And that's a really convenient way to do it as opposed to your standard slow-mo little bars that you move around. That way you can just drop it straight into another editor and get going straight from there. And speaking of the Photos app, you can now control what Apple is calling audio mix. They've got 4 new high quality microphones on the iPhone to capture stereo audio. And they're also using those 4 microphones to allow you to control what is heard in the audio track of your video recording. So it allows you to do just in front of the camera, the whole range, or what they're calling cinema mode, where the voices are sort of in the central track and then all the environment is around that. It's kind of cool, kind of interesting, almost like being able to control your recording mode on a fancy microphone, being able to like make it a shotgun style or make it more condenser style. It's a pretty cool way of doing it. And I think Apple is concerned that these phones aren't going to fly off the shelves because they're offering massive trade-in discounts for older iPhones, as well as they were just dissing other manufacturers the whole time, which is very un-Apple-like. They practically never mention any of their competitors, but they mentioned their competitors quite a lot, saying like, they don't use this material, we're best in class, we keep our resale value high. There was a lot of little lines that sort of give off the vibe that Apple is quite concerned that they're not going to sell this year and they want to get them out the door. So if you've got an older iPhone, maybe consider trading it in to get the newer iPhone if you want it. And if you're not all that impressed with the new iPhone and you're looking for a camera to fit in your pocket, I think you should check out this video here where I show you a camera that I think every photographer should have in their pocket, regardless of if the new iPhone is coming out or not. So you should check that out and I'll see you over there.